We're supposed to do this on December 19th.
Nice. So we'll have 6, 7 pages.
So I usually have 8 pages of notes. These are 11. I don't plan to cover everything that's in there. But I would encourage you to keep these notes. I easily could have broken this up into 2 different teachings. And you'll see why. So as a recap, just to recall where we were, right? Way back in the dawns of time, we were in 2 Peter. Okay, 2 Peter 3. And we had talked about, and it talked about as it was in the days of Noah, that they deliberately ignored the fact the world was destroyed by water. And it's a foreshadowing of the coming judgment. And we had talked about how Noah got the call 120 years before, built the ark. The last day, he was told to get on the ark, or a week before, got on the ark, shut the door the same day that it started. Massive earthquakes, continents moving, floods, big stuff. We talked about the ark. They were on there for a year. A year to the day, they got out. They were as organized as going out as going in. He built an altar. And this is the first mention of altars to the Lord. And this teaching I'm going to call the New World Order. I thought that was appropriate in light of what we're going through here today. Because there's a new world. There's a new world. And just like, and I'll tell you, God had already done this before. If you look, there was a world order in the Garden of Eden, wasn't there? God set forth the rules. You have a benefit. You can eat of every tree of the garden. Pretty easy eating. It just grows on its own. I want you to take care of the garden. I want you to subdue the earth. Take authority over it. And you only have one thing you can't do. Eat of that tree. Now they violated that, and guess what? There was a new world order. Guess what? Food's not going to be easy to get. Okay? And you're no longer going to be walking with me. Matter of fact, the place where you used to be with me is now guarded by an angel with a sword that turns every which way. Okay? And now, we fast forward 1,700 years or so, and there's the flood. So now we're going to have a new world order as well. There's still grace, but this is a new dispensation of grace. And I will tell you, by the way, that people do not understand the different ages in the Bible are going to misunderstand and misinterpret the Bible. That's key to understanding. Now, this section we're going to go into has 3 sections. Okay, I don't know if you guys can. That's probably not very readable, is it? That's probably better, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the first part is God setting forth some new rules of what's going to be. The second part, he makes a promise, a special promise called the covenant. We're going to talk about what that means. And the last one is this little incident with Shem, Ham, Japheth, Noah, and Noah's wife that we will talk about. So, turning the page. All right. So let's just read this first section in here. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, upon every bird of the heavens, upon everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish in the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. And as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. And for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. From his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For God made man in his own image. And you, be fruitful and multiply. Increase greatly on the earth and multiply." So let's start off with, as usual, I'm going to get 3 words in and we'll have to stop talk. Okay? And God blessed. This is an echo of Genesis 1, where God blessed the earth and God blessed Adam. There are 3 things that they are told are going to change. First one was be fruitful and multiply. By the way, as you read that section, is there anything that stands out to you in the beginning of that section and the end of the section? Verse 1 and verse 7 look almost the same, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, might be an indication to you that might be a chiasm. Okay. That also shows that this is one section. We have a start and an end. So this is a second chance that we have. And there's a great quote. I copied it and then I tried to find out who said it. I couldn't find it. Even though they have spoiled it all once and can spoil it again. And in fact, they will. And by the way, be fruitful and multiply on the earth. Children are a blessing. Children are what we're supposed to have. Okay? This whole thing about kids are a burden and everything else, that is a lie. Kids are a blessing. An absolute blessing. The fear of you shall be upon every beast and upon every bird and everything that creeps upon the ground and all the fish of the sea. Now I find it interesting that why God says that the fear, that he's going to put the fear in man, the fear of man in animals. And why would he do that? Because they weren't scared of him before. And keep in mind, before Noah, it said the earth was filled with violence. It didn't say mankind was violent. It said the earth was filled with violence. So I believe the animals started because they were probably corrupted with some DNA stuff that was going on there. That they probably started to be violent as well and killed for fun. And the truth is, many animals could kill us one-on-one. Okay? I mean, honestly, I've seen people run from turkeys, right? Right? You know? So, that is to protect us. Okay? It also, at some point, is going to help protect the animals because what we're going to find out here in the next time, they're going to be food for us. Right? And this is the true on everything else in there. Calvin, the providence of God is a secret bridle to restrain their violence. It is because of the original harmony that once existed between man and nature has been taken away by the fall and its consequences. According to the will of God, man is still the Lord of nature, but of nature now as an unwilling servant, to be restrained by effort, to be subjugated by force. Much like when they left the garden, food used to be easy, and now you had to extract it from the ground almost by force. It was not going to be easy. Those, for us men who are supposed to provide, we understand that curse really well. We probably don't understand the curse that went on to women as well, because we don't give birth, but for us, that is a significant thing. And now the animals will have to be, we take dominion by force. Now there's a missing group in there, and that is cattle, livestock. There are domesticated animals that don't have fear of us, sheep and things like that. But apart from them, everything else does. Genesis 9:3. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. So now there's not anything in here, by the way, clean and unclean. That will show up later. But clearly we're supposed to eat those animals that we shared the earth with. Now, why would that be? Well, there's two reasons. One is, when they landed, what was growing on the ground?
Trees.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Not much, right? Not much. What are you going to eat? Okay. It's going to take a minute for things to grow. Okay. And so guess what? You're on a keto diet at that point in time. Okay. You're eating protein because there isn't not a lot there. You probably have some stores left on the ark. Whatever you have in the ark is a year old. Okay. You want to eat some year-old pears? Year-old whatever?
You're not going to have year-old pears.
Well, whatever.
Nuts. Maybe some
nuts.
Maybe some grains.
Maybe some grains, whatever, right?
Cereal.
Cheerios.
Cheerios, yeah.
Some Cheerios.
And the other thing is God's going to use this in the future to be an example of his son. There's going to be feasts that they're going to have. And that's all him setting things up in the future. From the very beginning, even when you look at the days of the week, God has set things up to be a foreshadowing of what's to come, So this is all to give structure to Israel later, to give them things to do for the feasts. John 6:53. And Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in yourselves. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up on the third day. For my flesh is true blood, and my blood is true drink. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me." When we eat an animal, we in essence take its life into us, right? We're kind of absorbing that. We talk about consuming a teaching. We make it part of us, right? We want it to be internal in us. And so that is symbolic of what we do with Christ. Genesis 9:4. But you shall not eat the flesh with its life, that is its blood. Why? Why would that be? Well, blood is first what keeps you alive. It carries everything that you need. And if you don't have blood, you're not living. And a matter of fact, we can see some of the problems we're having with these shots, with the clot shots, right? The blood gets messed up, people die. It's just that simple. In the same way, Christ's blood is what keeps us alive. To go and rest in that. The rationale for sacrificial atonement was the substitution of an animal's life. And let me take you back to what we talked about at the end of the Garden of Eden. Okay? After they ate the fruit, they knew evil for the first time. And they realized that they had sinned. And where did they go, by the way? In the bushes. And God said, "Where are you?" Like he didn't know. Okay? And then what did God do? It says he clothed them with animal skins. Okay? Well, I'm pretty sure an animal is probably going to object to you taking its skin. Okay? So what did that mean?
Killed them.
They killed them. That God killed an animal, this animal, and said, "Here's how offensive this is to me. This is the cost. Blood has to be a life for a life. You sinned, you owe me your life. This is a representation of that." And blood represents that. Now, interestingly, the world follows his command not to eat blood, for the most part, not to eat human blood. Slaughterhouses all over the world drain blood before you actually go and slice up the meat. And you know why that is? Blood is very, very toxic to you. If you try to eat human blood, assuming that it is pure in and of itself, it doesn't have pathogens or other things in it, okay? But even when it's clean, you can take about two tablespoons, and that's about it, without you getting really, really, really sick, because it's extremely high in iron. And you have no way to excrete it. You have no way to take it out. It's extremely toxic. There are a couple animals that can drink blood. There is a vampire bat that can do that. And it's got some special organs, and even then, it can't have too much. Okay? So here's news. Okay? You're not a vampire bat. So you can't do that. And a matter of fact, so all the vampire movies, no, they would die because they can't eat human blood. For your lifeblood, 9:5, I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from man. So let's talk about that reckoning here a little bit. What does it mean to reckon? And no, we're not talking about the South. I reckon. Okay? So here is a couple of the uses. It's found 164 times, 152 verses. When Rebekah had twins, the children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. How was she inquiring of him? Was it a casual, if you have some time? She's probably like, "I want to know what's going on inside my belly right now," because just like they're having a tag team wrestling match. Right? Deuteronomy 4:29. But from there you will seek the Lord with your God, and you will find him if you search after him with all your heart and your soul and mind. And this is the tag end of the warning. Deuteronomy is Moses giving second law to the new generation, restating the law over what's going to be going on. And he's saying that if you do not follow what the Lord says, then he's going to take you out of this land and put you to a grievous place. And after you've been there for a while, from there you will seek the Lord your God, you will find him. If you search, how hard were they searching after the Lord after they had been in Babylon for a while? Was that just an easy question? Was this like, yeah, it's like, Lord, we really, really want you. Deuteronomy 19:18, the judges shall inquire diligently if there's been a crime acquitted. So they're like, I really want to know what's going on. Okay? And I'll go all the way down in here. And the application for us, by the way, this is how we should seek the Lord while he may be found. And the Lord will acquire of us whether we have done justice, loved kindness, and walked humbly before him. And that's a whole other teaching. We could go down a rabbit hole on that, about requiring. That sounds like an intense questioning, an intense desiring to know what's really going on. And so if we go back to here, 2 Peter 3:1 says, Genesis 9. So, for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it. From his male man I will require it. It's used 3 times in that verses. Okay? And isn't it interesting that who God, acting as the plaintiff, the prosecutor, he's also going to require this of animals. If an animal kills a man, that animal has to answer to God. Isn't that interesting? Now, by the way, that leads me to life. If the animal's not killed God, is God going to be nice to it? It makes me think, now this is just out of my own head. Are we going to see our pets in heaven if they've been nice? I mean, I don't know. That would sound like he's talking to the animals about, I'm going to require you to account for why you killed man. I don't know. So, that's John, that's not Bible. Just take that for whatever it's worth, okay? And from his fellow man is by his brother. And this is kind of a double entendre going back to Cain and Abel, killing your brother. Now, if you look at that, at that verse, from his fellow man, I will require a reckoning for the life of man. For whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. Now, that you probably don't see that in there, but that's the start of government. Because mankind is supposed to require from other men who kill a man that life, a life for a life. And that was the start of an eye for an eye as well. A life for an eye, let's go and extrapolate that out. Well, a life for life, an arm for an arm, a leg for a leg, an eye for an eye. That was known as lex talionis, the law of retaliation. Now, by the way, there's an interesting commentary here about whether or not God is in favor of capital punishment. It seems like he is, by here. Secondly, if man's going to do it, man's going to have to go and set up some type of structure to account for this. Now, have you noticed government tends to expand? It's expanded since then. Then it was basically one thing, we're just dealing with murder. Now we're dealing with jaywalking. Right? It kind of expanded out in regulations and mandates. Let's not go there. And how am I doing on time in here? I don't want to go too long because this one could be very long. Now, this is illustrated in part, by the way, in Romans 13, where Paul talks about that God made government. Let every person be subject to the governing authorities. There's no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Those that exist have been instituted by God. Now, that doesn't mean every government is godly. And that's a whole nother discussion about when do we follow government, when do we not follow government. The short answer on that, if our government is not saying something that is contrary to the Bible, we need to follow that. And of course, I'm saying that I'm thinking in the back of my head, I feel like the Lord going, and how are you doing with those speed limits when you drive? You know? So we all have issues with that.
Those are just suggestions.
I'm going to your church. And so, and Peter talks about that the purpose of government is to praise the good and punish the evil. And that really is what we are supposed to do. However, we will see in this age of government, which by the way is still going on, okay, and will go on through the 1,000-year kingdom, where the government will be Christ himself. But here's where this sort of starts. And we'll see that government, it doesn't really address the fundamental problem. What is the fundamental problem? Man's hearts. Our hearts tend to evil. You know, I read this fantastic paper and another paper that helped explain it on indwelling sin. And Romans 7 talks about how we have a law in our members that wars against the law of our mind. And a law means it's always going to be there. And so imagine walking across in a submerged walkway that the water's up to your knees, mid-thigh, on a fast-going river, and you need to walk this path. Okay? And so your sin nature is keep on trying to push you off that path. And does that water ever stop running? No. You're on that path every step. You're fighting against that. You're fighting against the current. Does that feel that way to you guys in life sometimes? Mm-hmm. You'd be like, can we have a day I'm not fighting with my old man nature? That would be really swell. Just one day would be great. We will have that day. We will have that day in the future. Genesis 9:7, be fruitful, multiply, increase greatly on earth, and multiply on it. And as for you, this is you. You have many children. You have many children, so your descendants will live all over the earth. So after saying, I want you to go out and go everywhere, populate the earth, new rules. Animals are going to be scared of you. You're actually going to eat animals, and you better not eat their blood. Now, spread. It's like, you know, the old huddle you see in football. Go team, go. Okay? We'll find out later they didn't obey. What a surprise. Okay. Second section. Chapter 9, 13 through 18. Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, this is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud. It shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. And when I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the water shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it. And remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of flesh that is on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and you and all flesh that is on the earth. There's a lot of repetition in here, if you haven't noticed, a ton. Mm-hmm. You know? And there's 3 times God says, I said. And why is there so much repetition?
So they remember?
That's one thing. Okay? Whenever we see anything said twice, that means it's established. And God's not likely to change his mind. Okay? 3 times means it's complete and full. Now, every and all is through there. So this is a complete covenant to the whole earth, to all of mankind. And this is a covenant also with who? Animals. He makes his promise to animals. Okay? By the way, there'll be another covenant he'll make with animals later on. What is that? You say. I'm not going to tell you right now.
Teaser.
So let's talk about what a covenant is. Okay, I spent some time on this. I spent a lot of time on this, and I'm going to try to boil it down for you. It basically is, you can think of it as a contract. What we say now, a written contract. So it's one thing if I make an oral promise to you. That certainly can be enforceable in some ways. But when it's in writing and signed, that means something else. Okay? That means it's really solid, right? So a covenant has a couple different things. Well, first of all, every covenant has a sign to it. And the sign is like the signature. The sign should last as long as the promise is going to last. Okay? So we have a sign when we get married. At least some of us do. And what's that sign?
Ring.
Ring. Okay? The sign here is above. When I was looking through this and studying what covenants meant back there between people, there's all kinds of different signs. People would, if they're going to become blood brothers, they would cut themselves, mix the blood together, put some ink in there, or some dirt in there, and mix it all together and put it back on there, so it would end up being like a little tattoo. Every time you go and say, "Oh yeah, he's my brother," okay? There's folks that would exchange clothing. "Oh yeah, I'm wearing Bob's clothes. I made a promise to Bob." That kind of thing. You know? Also, a pile of stones. We've seen that elsewhere. There's a pile of stones that act as a sign. So this is a bow. Now, oh, gotta make you small again. There we go. There are 8 different covenants in the Bible, and I think there's a 9th one to come, by the way. And so there's Edenic, Adamic, Noahic, Abrahamic, Mosaic, Palestinian, and the New Covenant, the Davidic and the New one. Now, the interesting one, this is the last one made to the entire earth. This is the last one done to everybody. After this, the focus narrows. It goes from the world to a nation. And then becomes even smaller yet with the Christ seed. The sign should last as long as the covenant. It should be visible to every party. You can think of rings. Usually when we do contracts, I give folks a copy of the contract. You can look at it every time. And it must stand out from a thing in the everyday. Otherwise, why would it stand? You know, how would you know that it's something different? And certainly, if I'm wearing Raul's clothes as a mark of our covenant, it'd be really noticeable to everybody around us.
More so if I'm wearing yours.
You wouldn't be wearing mine. You couldn't get them on unless you stapled the front of you or something. A little
This is John Locke's shirt.
Okay, this is an appropriate time.
What are you doing?
You get hot?
Oh, he has to
Okay,
reveal.
I have to show this. This is the birthday gift. This is the Christmas gift from my wife. Okay,
Nice.
isn't this fabulous? Here's what's better.
Oh.
That was my high school jersey number when I played football.
That's nice. He really liked it.
Yes, it was fabulous. It was fabulous. Okay, so now there are a couple different types of covenants. One is a suzerainty, which means from a powerful person to a less powerful person. Suzerainty means kingdom or rulership. Okay, obviously all the ones that God makes with us are those, right? As opposed to a parity one. Parity is both are equals. Okay. You also have a conditional one and unconditional. A conditional one would be like the Mosaic one, right? Mm-hmm. You do all these rules, okay? And if you do these things, then I'll do this. And if you don't, well, bad things are going to happen to you, okay? And unconditional, okay? So an example of unconditional is here with Noah. I'm going to just give this to you. Davidic is also the same way. Because of what you've done, I am going to, your sons will always be on the throne. So God first sets forth, here's the New World Order. And then here is my promise back to you. Now, all of these foreshadow this, all these terms foreshadow what's coming. The Noahic covenant established human laws and human rulers. The old covenant, Mosaic covenant, established God's law. The new covenant brings in God's ruler. The Noahic covenant shows sin is causing the death of man, requiring that a man's life be given. The old covenant shows a merciful God would make a sacrifice available for sin. And the new covenant reveals a permanent sacrifice to take away our sins. The Noahic covenant taught men not to pour out the blood of, it taught men to pour out the blood of animals. The old covenant said that the pouring out was a sacrifice to God to atone for sin. The new covenant talks about the blood of Christ being poured out for our sin. So God builds these things as we go along. He shows his plan to men, but in small steps along the way that his plan is being revealed. Section 3. Now, Noah gets off. We have a new start. We have a new beginning. The sons of Noah went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the people of the whole earth were dispersed. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine, and became drunk, and lay uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took the garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and walked backward, and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, "Cursed be Canaan, and the servant of servants shall he be to his brothers." He also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." After the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. Well, this is an interesting thing. And what we're going to see here is that they got off the ark looking for a new start. They thought they had quarantined. They thought they had gotten rid of that virus. And they found out they brought the virus with them. The virus of sin.
Mm-hmm.
It says, as much as we thought we escaped it, here it is. It's like, we thought we left the zombies before, but guess what? We still have the zombies with us. Matter of fact, we are the
Come with
zombies.
us, yeah.
Okay? Now, Ham's the father of Canaan. It's said twice, despite it being in the genealogy in the next chapter. Why? Hold that thought. Noah began to be man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. Okay? So how long does it take to grow grapes?
A season, like a whole,
At
Well,
least
almost
this.
a year.
They say it takes 3 years, I think,
Oh.
for
3
vines to
years.
start giving forth grapes.
Oh.
Okay? So, so he was probably planting other things at the same time. And after he's doing some work, he's like, I never had wine. I want to plant some grapes, right? And he's probably not had wine for a while, okay? And, and it said,
Yeah.
Psalm, what's that?
His tolerance was low.
His tolerance is low, yeah. And it said wine is to give pleasure to us, right? It's not a bad thing, okay? Armenia, where he landed, is known for making great wine, as a matter of fact, and great grapes. And so you can see a parallel from Noah taking that fruit of the tree in excess and Adam eating of the fruit of a tree as well.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? So this took a minute for him to do. And I would imagine that when he finally had that, it's like, well, this is delicious. And I really like this. And I'm going to have just a little bit more.
Alex,
It's a little joke.
can you relate to that?
I'll have just a little bit more.
Just a little bit.
Okay? 9:22. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. So let's stop right here. And what was Ham's sin? And there's been a bunch of different views on it. One is that it was voyeurism. He saw his daddy naked, and that was this awful sin. Everyone has a really hard time explaining this awful curse based upon that. And they try to say it's culture and other stuff. To me, it doesn't make sense. I'm going to curse your son forever because you saw me naked.
Well, he ran and told his brothers.
We're going to get to that in a minute.
Okay. He was being a brat.
He was being more than a brat.
Yeah.
Okay. The other one was castration. They thought it was the crime of Ham castrating his father. Okay. However, and part of that to say because Noah never had any more kids, ever. That's kind of odd. Okay. So that's how they sort of get there. Some say it was paternal incest, that Ham had sex with his dad. Okay. That doesn't really explain why Ham is the father of Canaan. Okay? Now, the Hebrew words for uncovered and nakedness is a phrase unique to Moses and only used by him to describe incestuous intercourse. When those two words are used together, that's the only time it's used. And I have a lot of references in there. I won't go over it now because of time, but I'll just say Leviticus 18:7, you shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. Okay? So, and if you look at his versus her tent, it really should be her tent. So if I look what really happened, Noah got drunk, decided he's going to have a good time with his wife, goes into her tent and passes out. She's in there naked. Ham strolls by and says, I'm going to get me some. And his mom gets pregnant with Canaan. Now, who else does this sound like that we've studied before? The daughters of Lot.
Yeah, Lot.
The daughters of Lot, right? And out of that came Moab and Ammon, horrible enemies of the Israelites. Well, this made Canaan. The Canaanites, friends of Israel, enemies of it. Enemies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting how that started. So as a result of that, Noah doesn't have any more children with his wife, which would make sense. And Canaan is cursed. Now that ties that all up together rather neatly. As a result of that, verse 24, Noah woke from his wine. Actually, let me come back there. Okay. Now that would, where we go? So Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of the father and told his two brothers outside. What did he go do? He bragged about what he had just done. Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
Gross.
Gross. And his brothers went back, and now you can understand, they walked backward and covered it up. Doesn't that make a lot more sense? Okay. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be to his brothers. The servant of servants is the lowest of the servants. And then we go down to verse 26. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. Now we're going to find out later that Shem is where the Christ line goes through. Semites, refer to the Jewish people, that's where it comes from. Shem. Shem, Sem. The Semites. So what is God teaching in this section? The flood cleansed the earth. It did not cleanse man's heart. And they still brought that evil thing. And so when we see how evil sin really is, it looks as disgusting as that. One of the prayers that I've had recently is, Lord, make me hate my sin as much as you hate my sin. You know, I want to look at my sin with God's eyes. Not with my eyes, because you know what I want to say when it's my eyes? It's not that bad. It's only once in a while. Come on. Rather than going, no, this is serious. So, I still have another slide in here. Now there is the generations that we have there. And you can see that Noah lived a bit after the flood. So did Shem, right? Likely Noah was the first king of Salem, which later became Jerusalem. Jerusalem. Okay? And I believe Melchizedek was a title, like Pharaoh is a title. And therefore the first Melchizedek was Noah. And it talks about in Hebrews that he was without father or descent because he lived before the flood. The people there didn't know his parents, right? No one knew them. And then who had that afterwards was Shem. Noah lived until Abraham was 100 years old. Shem outlived Abraham. If you can imagine being able to go over and talk to a guy, what was it like before the flood? Can you tell me what it was like then? You could do that with him, assuming that he would talk with you. So, now, to pull the focus out a little bit, we've been focused very deeply into this. And the next chapter is going to talk about the Table of Nations and the Tower of Babel. And so we're done with the Toldot of Noah now, the generations of Noah. There's another Toldot. There's two other Toldots, one of Shem, which is very short, and then another one of the sons of Shem, or I think it's the sons of Shem, or the sons of Noah. That we're in it has the Table of Nations and the Tower of Babel. And after that, there's a big division. God no longer talks, Genesis doesn't talk about the history of the world anymore. He talks about how the Christ seed follows through and how the nation of Israel is first conceived and then incubated and then brought forth in birth. And that would be the story of the patriarchs of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph, which we're not going to go into. But that starts after chapter 11. So next week we're going to do 10 and 11, and we're going to talk about the Table of Nations and the Tower of Babel, and where the peoples of the world came from and spread. I know that's beyond what we're doing, but I feel like that would close off the story of Noah and what we're doing in this thing, because there's a clear division after chapter 11 in Genesis. So that's my plan on that. And then we will go back to 2 Peter and talk about the judgment that's to come and other things like that. And then we'll see. And then by that point, we'll probably be just about, I hope, closer to Tres Dias. So